hello, and welcome to Follow Everton. We know the result at the weekend, not what we wanted to see. We also know the transfer window is done and dusted now. We brought in Charlie Alcaraz, and we have a match against the Reds coming up here shortly. So, what I thought I would do while I'm available before I go out for work, my own work commitments, was to look at the current setup of the Everton senior squad and some of the youth players on the fringes here, look at who's out of contract at the end of the season, and get a little bit of fan reaction if, depending on how many people are up midday on a Monday there in the UK, to join along and basically see how we see the people that are out of contract at the end of the year, either through loan or their contract actually expiring at the end of the 2024-2025 season, and do we want to bring them back, and kind of having a discussion on how they're doing under Moyes in particular. So and to Wormy, good morning. It's 7:30 at night here, so ideal kind of crossover period, I think, without it being midnight for me, just to make sure I'm in your guys' afternoon. So anyway, welcome. So why don't we start with this one? Let's see if I get my camera correct. So I brought together basically all the players that are in contract, that are out on loan, that are part of the senior squad, which is why you see the likes of a Holgate there, as well as some of the fringe players, in this case, the likes of Roman Dixon. Kind of break down according to, and it's always difficult here. So this is a big caveat. How the value of a player is subject to their current form, the squad's availability, and how well you can demand in the marketplace between various clubs. So I used the current market value from Transfer Market. The numbers look kind of funky because a lot of them are in euros, so I just switched them over. And then I used for the annual wage estimate a group called Capology that will combine or determine the either weekly or annual wages. So I thought to make it kind of even on a yearly basis, instead of doing the weekly, I've put the annual wages in, as well as the current age of the players according to SofaScore, and the contract expiry date. And then I've used Opta statistics to show how basically the midfield, the attack, and the defenders are looking. And then after that, we'll jump into the players that are out of contract that are flagged in red and what we should do with them. All right. So defensively, we know Nathan Patterson. We're going to have him for a couple more seasons. So in terms of control and value, he's really good value for money. If you compare him to the likes of a Mason Holgate, and granted, we're trying to move on from players like the Holgates, value for money, we're quite set up there. The question is, even if it's a 1.5 million per season on the books, we want some squad depth, and he's young enough that he holds some value. But if he isn't playing consistently enough, does he cut out? And then you wonder, like, okay, long term, do we want to keep Patterson or let him fly somewhere else? Holgate and Keane, similarly, or alternately, sorry, their market value, especially by their age, is starting to drop down a little bit. They're both still on quite high wages, but for Mason's case, he's out, I believe it was at West Brom, but he's out on loan, so a lot of that salary was eaten this year. Taki, we got him on a free. His annual wage is quite high. It's a little bit around 100K a week, averages out to 5 mil. And yes, we've had a really tough week with him, but to be honest, we can't blame him for the lack of success for Everton the last couple of years. He's been a really steady presence at the back. O'Brien, which I think is kind of interesting here, coming over from France. On the wage side, he's on the lower end. I suppose maybe it's not a Premier League proven thing, but market value, I still think they have him a bit low, but he hasn't proven to pull it off in the Premier League consistently. So he sits there. I think what's interesting next is Ashley Young. The wages, we're paying him 2 mil a year, so probably about somewhere in that 40 to 50K a week window there. His market value being quite low. I think him being, yes, he's 39. We know he shouldn't be a reliable starter for us. But if he does what he has done in recent times, I'm not afraid to bring him on a relatively low wage bracket if he wants to play. That's squad depth at a low build to us in terms of Premier League wages. Mikalenko, we have for a little while longer, or at least he's not expiring this year. It's exciting to see how he's picked up under Moyes. I haven't heard much and didn't listen to the Moyes press conference post FA Cup loss to Bournemouth to see if we've heard anything there. Seamus, he's still on quite a high wage, and of course, being age 36 and his injury track, and expires out in the summer. And then we have Branthwaite, who we've talked a whole bunch on him and the value and the challenges with United on what they think he's worth. And I honestly don't think transfer market has his value right at all. But Peter Duggan, I'll come to your point too, because that's exactly my thought on it. But Jared Branthwaite is going to be at least under contract for a fair while. He's now recovered from that injury, and he's been consistently in the squad here. If we think Roman Dixon is Premier League able and plucking the wages out of some of the youth players is a bit of a tough order. I had to find whatever wage I could for him. They said something up to around of 21,500, so very low wages if that's to be true, and the market value hasn't really been made public. But some of these younger players, like a Roman Dixon, if they make it, they're going to skyrocket up, and they're a great asset to the team. If they don't, well, that's the reason why you have a lot of prospects. So to Peter Duggan's point, I think this is a great one. The contracts running out present us with a golden window of opportunity, with most of the deadwood off the books and an improved turnover. If Moyes invests wisely in the team, we can finally stabilize. Yes, and part of this is why I'm taking a little bit longer looking at each position here. Defensively, look, we won't have, unless something drastically changes. Okay, Young, Coleman, Keane, and Holgate are off the books. Right back, you're going to have Nathan Patterson and maybe Jake O'Brien if we still put him in that spot. Jake O'Brien also acts as the third centre back, and you have Branthwaite and Tarks in the middle, Mikalenko at left back, and Dixon coming in as an option for right back as well. So from a baseline there, we are certainly thin if we have that, if we don't extend contracts or bring anyone in. But the other thing that we all know is that Everton have actually we've made money in the transfer window versus spent money as an expense relative to all but I think it was maybe, I'm forgetting the other squad here. You add it in the chat, but I think there's only Everton and one other club in the last year or last 3 years that have actually made a profit on their ins and out sales, which is not typically the business model unless you have an excellent system ground up, grassroots. What you're really doing is you're needing the gate sales, ticket sales, and basically a lot of game day revenue to fund a lot of these players. And once they get to a certain age, if you can bring players in early, fantastic. Or if they don't work out, move them on. So what we're really hoping now is that we can start to build out at the grassroots, but maybe it takes a little while to supplement those players in across defense, midfield, and forwards. What I haven't added here, and I didn't have time to do a smaller slide on it, but Jordan Pickford is still in contract for a little ways here. But the other two keepers that we have on our bench, in João Virginia and Asmir Begovic, are both out of contract at the end of the year as well. Defensively, if we look at the Opta stats on a goals conceded, yes, we've played one less game than everyone else. So the defense is slightly better, but we're ranked 5th out of 20, only conceded 28. In terms of goals conceded, we're from an expected. So if you like your XG, this is where that comes in. How many goals we're expecting to give up? 30. So really, we're pretty close to our margin. And if there's a difference there, that means the opposition aren't converting opportunities. The higher that GC versus XGC, really what you're telling me is, okay, we are, if the GC is much higher than the XGC, then they're having excellent opportunities and we're creating scenarios for them to convert, or they just happen to score a lot against us and no one else. So really we're outperforming by having a negative there as well. We do concede a lot of shots, but that's not always a bad thing. A lot of them have been outside the box. quite a few on target. The main catch here, though, yes, you can have XG per shot of 0.1, which was certainly a lot of teams were in that bracket. But the challenge we have is we're giving up a lot of goals inside the box. So we're set up comfortably to let people take pot shots, but the second we are vulnerable in the box, that's where the goals are coming in. So if we look at the midfield, I've tried to make sure that there's just enough room to combine attacking midfielders and strikers together to fit 3 pages here. So some of the wingers you'll see on the next set of slides. So Dwight McNeil, we know he's out with that knee injury at the moment. And so we haven't seen how he fits under the Moyes setup, but he's under contract for a little while now. His wages are quite low ever since he came over from Burnley, but the market cap seems surprisingly high here, though, at around 21 million. Hard to see if that would actually come through, but if that's the case, we have a valuable asset at this point. And if he's scoring goals in the league, he's got a lot of resale value if he doesn't fit in the Moyes setup once he does come back. Oro Mangala, I've included, of course, because we saw him for a little while here as a loan option, but as we know, his loan has been kind of shut down and he's been resent to Lyon. But if he was to come back, we would have to look at doing a re-sign for him. In terms of market value, he was quite high as well and was on quite a high wage coming over from Ligue 1. So we also recalled Tyler Onyango, so I brought him in to this chart. We know he's been playing he can be a box-to-box and as well as a centre-half, but I haven't seen too many stats on how he's been doing. Abdoulaye Doucouré, for those that are looking at the numbers here, in terms of annual wage, I think he's at something to the effect of 110, 115K a week, so notably one of the higher wage earners in the squad. And at age 32, and by his output this season, where he's kind of at that sweet spot between market value and annual wage. So really, the younger someone is, the wage is lower, their market value might be getting higher and higher based on if they're proving themselves in the league, that's going to skyrocket. And once you reach about equal here, you're right on the edge of kind of dropping down in terms of net value at the twilight of the career, let's say. Carlos Alcaraz, I flagged in yellow because officially he's not here with us on a permanent, but it is a loan with the obligation to buy. And his value, I think what we really need to see with him is sort of consistent track record in the Premier League. And I'm really excited from his debut. So expecting to see more from him. And he's on quite an affordable wage as well. And again, quite young. Idrissa Gueye, quite a high salary pack, but let's be honest, he's been quite a resolute, hardworking professional. You can have your opinion of is he good enough going forward or something to that effect, but the reality is he's nearing the end of his career, but his output and his consistency, you can't shame him for that. And I think that he's been a really reliable and important performer for us. James Garner, I think, is one for the future for us. You've seen him on the wage bracket for the moment. On the lower end, and similar for Tim Iroegbunam. So assuming that we see Iroegbunam coming into games in the second half of the season, we have James Garner, Iroegbunam, potentially Carlos Alcaraz on the obligation to buy as starting 3 central midfielders, which could be quite exciting. And I did quickly look up Luke Butterfield and Isaac Heath, so Butterfield he's had 9 starts and 1 goal, coming out from the number 10 position, and for the under 21s. And Isaac Heath we're starting to see occasionally in the starting squad as well. I don't think I've seen him play for us yet on the first team, but he's had 12 starts and 2 goals and played off the left-hand side. But both of their contracts come up the end of the season as well. So I try to get the LeBron imitation of Beto's goal score there, so got that in the background. Sorry, I quickly forgot to jump in here to the Opta stats. So part of this, trying to capture what the midfield does as a metric is a little bit tricky. So what I did is I flagged the possession statistics and put them under the midfield, but that may not be a true representation of them as a team, because a lot of possession in our case, we have quite a low possession. We give the ball away, and that's not always on the midfield if that's a decision by the tactical team that was formerly known as Sean Dyche and currently known as David Moyes. So, but possession-wise, we are quite low there. As a passing percent, we are one of the lowest for hitting the target consistently, as well as how many attempts in the final third were in that bottom four again. So right in that sort of relegation zone of teams, let's say. Passing rate quite in the final third, we know the ball breaks down a lot, and we're not able to make those key passes consistently, so we're struggling there. And then some of the if you want to imitate Kevin De Bruyne's quote of not all passes, or you can have a high passing rate and it doesn't mean much. I think that's sometimes a bit tricky with statistics like forward passing rate to say we're third out of 20 because we go forward 39% of the time. It wasn't really capturing key areas, but according to OptaStats, we have a high forward passing rate, and we're kind of mid ground on backward passing. And I think what surprised me on here was crossing accuracy. So a lot of teams have a much lower accuracy than 24%. But if you're considering a lot of diagonal balls and crosses that way in that statistic, then yes, we do achieve a lot of diagonal balls that hit targets. But are we really challenging with effective balls that are in difficult places for the defenders to take on in the final third? Sorry, we'll read through some of the messages here. So James Graham, who's paying 20 mil for Dwight? Maybe Dyche when he goes to Leicester. Yeah, and I think that I'm not sure if that's official there, James, but I could see Dyche going to the likes of Leicester, which could make for a very interesting, let's call it relegation scrap to the end of the season. But what I had mentioned, the transfer market, it's very subject to supply, demand, and yes, are they fit, able, and what is the let's say Saudi Arabia wants to buy a player, it may not match the market value according to transfer market, and a lot of the time the true value of these players won't be determined through groups like transfer market, but that's the best we have. So if we look at the forwards now, so one of our favorite characters in Dominic Calvert-Lewin, favorite for whatever reason you choose to pick, been a starting player for us for seasons. He's finally recovered from a lot of the injury challenges he's had in previous years, but it's been a tough year for the Everton forwards. We've only scored 23 goals to this point, and in the bottom three in terms of goals scored. And Calvert-Lewin's been leading that line. His contract comes up in the summer. He's on around 100K a week with a market value here again of 18 mil. And that's another, as we're saying here, subject to who wants to bring him in, because I think in the right setup, he could hit the ground running and be excellent, but it may just not be at Everton at this point in his career. What's really nice to see for Everton's future is the likes of Iliman Ndiaye. He's 24. He's doing excellent for us, taking on 2 to 3 players, doing that little pivot on that left wing, and a thrill to watch. And annual wage-wise, still quite a low wage for his value, honestly. We have him controlled until 2029, so an excellent piece of work there and bit of business. The market value, I think the second people start to update that algorithm, he's going to jump way up in the charts there. Then we have the likes of Jack Harrison, who's, again, we talk about value. Iliman Ndiaye and Harrison, well, those that have watched us for the last couple of seasons realize Harrison has really struggled at points, but we also know he has a proven track record in the Premier League, so that's probably where his market value sits. And really excited to see I saw real positives out of him in that second half of the match against Bournemouth. So I'll leave some commentary there for the final section. Beto, he seems to be getting into better form with us. As with many of the Everton players, when we play poorly, he's not good enough. When we play well, we're happy to have him as a starting forward for us. Right now, at least, we know that he's earned about 30 million euros from Udinese. So that first season, we were not obliged to pay for that transfer. but that should be coming up here at the end of the season. So assuming that nothing else gets messed up with the payment there, we have him under contract until 2027. Yusuf Shamiti is another one that we haven't gotten to see much this season. He's going to be under contract for a little while as well. So one for the future, and hopefully we get to see a little bit of him after his injuries heal. Armando Broja, there's been a flash in the pan and back injured again. Hopefully we get to see him in 4 to 5 weeks, but he was on those Chelsea wages. Jesper Lindstrom has had a bit by his age and time across various leagues, has a slightly higher salary package, which we adopted from, I believe it was Napoli. And again, we'll leave him in the similar conversation for Jack Harrison here in a brief period. So Martin Sheriff, I think, has scored a few times now in the league. Let's see. So he's played his 7 games, 5 started, plays about 50 minutes per game, and he's scored 2 goals so far. So it's a bit tricky to get to see. Maybe you guys get to see more of the youth squad over in UK, but it's not something we get too much coverage of, unfortunately. But Martin Sheriff would be one to keep an eye on in the future, and I think similar for the likes of Owen Barker. He's only had 2 starts and likes to sit in the number 10 spot, but his contract comes up at the end of the season. Amari Benjamin, another striker for the future. He's been one of the he started 11, but played 13 in total and scored 7 goals. So a key source of goals for our youth squad at the moment, the under 21 level. So another one interesting for the future, but it's hard for me to give too much of a consensus or opinion without getting to see them, I suppose, live. And if you guys are out in the UK, maybe closer up front and personal on the Saturday. So this was the what do I call it again? The tier list I made. So basically, it's a combination of extend is for players that are about to have their contract end at the end of the season. So we extend them and basically bring them back. A little bit like how there's discussion of Idrissa Gana Gueye. We extended him before, bring him back for one more, or the likes of Abdoulaye Doucouré. Sign on a perm. So on a permanent basis, we have 5 players on loan deals. That includes Charlie Alcaraz. That includes, in this case, I've included Oro Mangala in that. I've also included, who else we got in our loan system, or have I completely lost it? Armando Broja and Jesper Lindstrom as well. And then send him back is basically the flip of that. If we have another loan deal question mark. So we have players, and Jack Harrison, I think, fit that bill last time. Are they doing well enough that if there's no better option, or it's too expensive for us to bring him in full time, maybe we bring him back on a loan deal because he'll fit the bill for the next season, and then send him back if it's just kind of fallen through and not worth bringing him back for whatever reason. And at the bottom there, so it's part of the for those that are out of contract and assigned by Everton, we have the likes of Neil Mope, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Seamus Coleman, Michael Keane, Begovic, Gana Gueye, all over the spot, all over the place. So what I'm trying to do is get a bit of an interaction from you guys. Based on the screen sharing here, I may have to look to the left and alternate screens as we go. So if I miss any of your messages, we'll go from there. But we'll start with those that are on loan. So Eugene, feeling at the moment that Jack Harrison will go back to Leeds after his Everton loan. So in this case, we'll say send him back. So that would be an example there. So James is feeling that we should keep Pickford and Illiman and sell the rest. Well, if we can win with 2 players, that would be excellent, but I think that's it might be a little bit difficult. So what I'll also do, and if I'll pick some players, if there's any opinions on them other than mine, feel free to have some commentary there. But for right now, I'm going to be a little bit safe here, and the reason is I want to see how the attacking players perform under Moyes for the rest of the season. Him and Harrison, for me, yes, they have not fit the bill of what we expect or is expected at the Premier League. Not scoring enough goals, not leading to us being on the bottom three of teams on scoring goals and creating goal scoring opportunities. Okay, but Jesper has been now very involved in near scoring a few times under Moyes. So I'm excited without saying we'll bring him back as of now. So I'm keeping him in that spot. So, and the next player on loan, which I think I'm very undecided on at the moment. I think it's thoroughly depending on squad depth at the end of the season. But Oromangala, I cannot blame him for how Everton's done this season. Similar to in many ways to the Idrissa Gana Gay spot in the squad. He controls possession. He'll play deep, and he actually contributes a few goals from long distance. I don't think he would be the worst signing for Everton by any means, but he's also not a slam dunk at this point from on the loan perspective. But you also say if we're short on the midfield and he's affordable and his transfer fee is reasonable for Everton, now that we have a little bit freed up in the purse, maybe we bring on Mangala as a permanent if Olympic Lyon are open to it. So we have two more to consider. I really like Brozier. I just haven't seen enough of him, and we know we've got injury issues and players that have sat on the bench a lot. If he's fit, performs well for the duration of the season, that's very easy to move him to a different spot. Yeah. Let's see. So David Murphy says send Mangala back. He'll be out for 12 months recovering from ACL. So we can put him here. What I will say, though, let's say when he does recover from that ACL, assuming that he's still in a position where he could perform equally to what he has pre-ACL, how would you like him in the future of the Everton squad that has the likes of James Garner, quite likely Charlie Alcaraz, Tim Eric Boonham through that midfield? And I think that as a fourth member there, he would not be a bad fit. David feels that Brozier is made of sticks, and it's tragic because it was so exciting watching him get involved. You could just feel the fire in him and instinctively knowing how to cut past players. So it was really exciting. But the reality is, unless his fitness changes, it's really hard to see wanting him to come back. So this is going to be very early on and instinctual, but Charlie Alcaraz is really exciting on a first glance. I was underselling his impact to the squad, knowing that he had been at Southampton when they've struggled and he wasn't getting game time out at Flamenco. But look, if he plays anything like we just saw him in that role in that number 10, I would love to see him as part of this squad. And I think because of the obligation to buy, it's kind of an easy slot for me to put him sign on a perm. So now it leads us to a bit of a different spin now. So this is all the loanee players, and now we either extend or let them walk on a free. I'm sure there's some other options I could have made for the players here, but I think pretty quickly we'll put and Charlie Brown saying Alcaraz is worth a punt for 15. I think that's certainly fair. 15 mil is, I suppose, according to Transfer Market, 5 mil cheaper than buying the likes of Dwight McNeil at the moment. But for 15 mil in the market that we have now, that's quite a good setup. So, or quite a good deal. So, why don't we look at some players that I think are pretty straightforward? Mason Holgate, we've been waiting for him to see out his contract. So I can't see any world that he comes back or that the fans would want to see. So let him walk on a free. And I think Peter Duggan's on the same page here. So Michael Keane, look, we've given him a lot of flack. He's handled it. But at the same time, either someone wants to buy him and it's probably too late, but bringing him back would be not the right move at this point for himself or us. Yes, he can strike a ball, but he is not what you can't rely on as the number 9. Thank Keane for his service, but let's be honest, it's time to go. So then we look at the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's had his moments with us, as we all know, especially under Carlo, but those days seem long away. And unfortunately, I don't see a scenario where maybe we see something under Moyes at the very end of the season, but it just seems that the something hasn't been clicking with him. Maybe we get enough wingers to provide effective crosses for him to win the balls aerially. But if we've seen it's been quite a difficult game for a lot of strikers under Moyes in the past. He's going to be here for another few seasons. We want someone that can play the channels, and I don't think, based on how we've seen DCL, that's going to work. So David Murphy feels that it's a time to say goodbye there. I'm not going to do my do singing or anything, but look, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's been fantastic at times for us. Yes, he's been injured and he hasn't performed consistently for us, but when he's on point and occasionally he strikes these excellent goal like this, what was it? He scored a goal against Spurs that was bringing back those moments where he can do pirouettes with the and strike the ball from the 18-yard box. Excellent to see, but I think it's time to move on. Now we have the likes of João Virginia. Now, when it comes to keepers, I think long term you'd rather have him than Begovic. He's certainly not Pickford, but at the same time, I don't think he's done a whole lot wrong. The question would be, will he get a starting opportunity somewhere else? And if not, maybe he's happy to stay as Pickford's backup. Neil Mope, if you like his memes and his tweets, so be it. But a lot of Everton fans have been done with him, and he's half his way out to back to France. So now the next one, which will be, I think, consistent for a lot of us, would be Abdoulaye Doucouré. He scored some critical goals, and him being striking a chord with Sean Dyche after Lampard was pivotal to us staying up. But his wage bracket, the performances he's consistently putting in, what I would like to see is someone else. Even if we pay a little bit more for the amount he cost us, I don't think we can get a lot more for that position. So I think we probably end up seeing Abdoulaye Doucouré here, but there is a scenario I can imagine where if it's a slightly reduced wage bill, so it's not 110 grand a week, all of a sudden maybe it's something closer to 50K a week, or with incentives by plane, maybe it's worth bringing him back, but not with the expectation that he's starting every match, because you can definitely tell on the wear and tear. So, so Peter feels Mope and Doucouré walk on a free, and oh, these analogs are a little different, but yeah, I think Abdoulaye Doucouré and 130 a week at times. Look, when he was the only one scoring for us under Dyche, you would have paid him more than that for his contribution to keep us up. But at this point, when we are in a way cleaning house and restructuring with a new midfield, the number 10 needs to be one of those positions. Ashley Young, I think we're gonna get a mixed bag here. I may be controversial in this, but I think if and only if he is the third or fourth starting left back, right wing, left wing, especially at his age and his market value, we're not going to get a lot for him. He's probably quite comfortable being on quite a modest wage salary, and you know what you get from him. That I would say, if he is going to be a third or fourth starter, I don't mind having Ashley Young in the squad. But the second you say he's the future, well, no, he isn't. I think you'd probably have Ashley Young in there based on how many wingers and fullbacks we get in the summer, and maybe make a decision on him late on, or get him in just to make sure that we have something assured until we can get someone else in. And Peter's point, Ashley Young technically and psychologically is still an elite player, but physically has gone is too far gone, but have ill feelings. Don't have ill feelings, but a logical solution for long term to let him walk. And Wormy feels not a not a chance for another year. So this one's going to split, and it is a fan interaction. So I feel that we could see him come back. May not be popular, but if we are not getting, because he's been here for a couple of years, he knows the game. If we don't get other players in, I could see a scenario we bring him back. So Seamus, I don't really want. I want to see him in the coaching staff. I want him, maybe not a statue, but he's the heart and soul of this club. He's the captain on the sidelines. He's the one screaming with Leighton Baines next to him, keeping it together when we're scoring against Peterborough. But what we really want him to do is basically retire with grace. If we sign him, what I do is we sign him for a one day contract, just so he can walk on. He can be a part of the starting lineup for a charity match before the start of the first game at Bramley Moore, and then we say thank you for your services. Can you migrate to management? And that's a good question, James. I'll have to look into that. I'm not honestly too sure. And I think David's on a similar vein here, that Seamus will retire at end of season. So coaching role for him. And I think that's really where it is. To say let him walk in a free is a little bit awkward here. I mean, honestly, for Ashley Young too, you could say let them retire with grace and we thank them for their contribution to the club. I think that could honestly happen. And feeling maybe we have him manage the under 17s or under 18s. So yeah, Seamus, if he comes back, I can't see that being a practical solution, other than for a token gesture to him. So Idrissa Gana Gay may be another one that I I think there's a scenario, and I think I heard Ryan and some others mention that he may well have an extension, but when I looked it up, started googling around to look at contracts, I didn't see anything formally set up for him. So if that really is the case, we know that Idrissa Gana Gay, he's on a relatively high wage bill, but not crazy for Premier League standards. We know what we're getting from him, but I think honestly, he goes through these waves where he's pivotal to the squad, in terms of being able to help when we do start pressing, and he's very good at supporting the fullbacks at times. But he's really at that time that you'd say I'd probably keep him for one more year and extend him just like we did last season. And I think David Murphy's on a similar page to me. I'd like to keep him, but there's only so many more years of him at this level, and he's right at the brink to me. So Asmir Begovic, yeah, we can extend, but if he's not playing, are we taking up a spot for a new young keeper to come in? I would say probably having João Virginia as the backup keeper, and then a younger keeper on the bench as an opportunity if we are going for a three keeper starting 20 every match. So yeah, and Ian Clark saying that Ghana is a superhuman. So yeah, I think taking care of himself, him and Ashley Young are in a similar vein in that way. So Idrissa Gana Gay, physically very fit for his age, but that likely won't last. He's never been a great player technically, so don't think we keep him or can afford to this summer. And that's another thing. If Gana Gay is demanding similar wages, you say if it's on a 1-year contract and we have some other players that are cost controlled, the likes of the James Garners, Tim Eric-Bunham, and Carlos Alcaraz, then in that midfield position, we have some financial wiggle room for a season or so if we need to shore up the midfield. The other option would then be, do you bring up I guess it won't be next season, it'll be a season after, the likes of an Oro Mangala, or do you find someone that isn't Idrissa Gana Gay to fill his shoes? Because we brought him back last time after he left, went to PSG, and then we brought him back. So, and now we're going to, now we have Metcalf. So we've got some of our younger players here. So he's had 6 starts and 0 goals for Chesterfield, and I think his contract ends at the end of the season. So this is a part where, like, I don't know a whole lot about these guys to make too many opinions, but you could extend almost any of them. But at the same time, if he's not making an impact on loan and he's starting to reach that decision point, maybe we let him move permanently. But as we said, we are going with some following some commentary here. So if we get enough keeps or sells, we move players around. So we're going to keep Metcalf for now, so extend him. Next, we have Luke Butterfield. So he's played. He's had 9 starts and 1 goal, and plays in the number 10 position. I'm generally of the inclination that we should be trying to keep and build up our bench unless there's a drastic decision otherwise. So he seems to be just building his skill set at the under 21s level and getting some time there. So maybe we see into the end of the year how he does, but that would be great to kind of make sure that we're from the outside. If you're trying to bring in not young talent and develop, if we're getting rid of our youth in the forward positions, what does that say for the longevity of the setup? Or is it a matter of Moyes makes the decision that we're going to change things, and you know what, the current youth isn't what we want, and we're gonna rip it all up and start youth again. So we have the left winger next, Isaac Heath. So he scored 2 goals on the left side. I think what you're similar to the last couple of youth players, you, unless there's a reason to move them on, and we lack depth in that position, why would we move on Isaac Heath unless someone gave us a really good offer? And to David Murphy's point, the younger players won't cost us much. They'll be on £500 to 3,000 a week, depending on the development. So yeah, as long as we don't run out of space for them all to get playing opportunities in the various, between the reserves, under 21s, and out on loan, as long as we can fill those spots in the squad, then we keep who we can really. And then we have Owen Barker, who's I think also so Butterfield. My apologies. I think he's played might be more of a box to box position, but if someone else has watched more of him, you can add to it. But Owen Barker is going to be in a similar spot to me to Butterfield. May well be one for the future. I think we need to keep our young players as best we can. And the other one that I think was really surprising for us was the Tyler Onyango decision. So we recalled him after a spell away. We haven't really figured out what his best position is. He didn't light the world on fire from what I could tell, but maybe it's just the loan didn't work out. And maybe Moyes decided to recall him. And he was a box to box midfielder, was on the bench last season a fair bit. This season that we tried to remake him, and saw him play with Reece Welsh as the center half pairing when we lost 3-1 to Salford, and then went out on loan. So I guess the real question is, for someone like that, is it time to part ways, or is Moyes, because we are seeing a situation now where he's going to be brought back by Moyes? There's a method to the madness, and Moyes can come up with something. So this is what I have here. If there's any last minute thoughts on changing that around, we can feel free to let me know. But otherwise, that's basically it. I think we may, if Lindstrom performs well in the second half under Moisey, there's a chance we bring him back, but his wages are a bit higher. So could you go into the open market to get someone differently? I see us, of course, with the loan and obligation to buy, bringing Charlie Alcaraz in. Ora Mangala is out for a year, so really you can't see a scenario bringing him back. If Broja magically does what Dyche did with DCL, and he starts becoming fit again and scoring for us, maybe there's a scenario where we keep him and then let Beto move to Serie A as he's seeming to want to do. And then we have the likes of Jack Harrison, who something has to drastically change for him under Moyes for things to go differently. So I think that's it for me. I've got to get ready for my work tomorrow as I'm flying out to middle of Australia. But appreciate you all here on a midday. And if you like that not quiz, the tier builder, I did actually put that in the link for the show. So feel free to click on that and have your own opinion of the players. So up the Toffees. I won't be on the Liverpool content, but I'm sure we'll have a pre-match, a post-match, and fingers crossed for the final match, final derby at Goodison. Up the Toffees.